Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Process Podcast. Cameron Currie, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for welcoming me into the podcast. This is such a unique experience and a surreal one. I'm sure we're going to dive into it. I appreciate it.
It is surreal. I mean, it's surreal for me because, I've known you for some time, but this is actually the first time we've ever been on like a video call of any sort. We've had very, very, very brief conversations. We've been in the same country doing the same kind of thing for a certain stint of time. And now, essentially kind of working together in some way, shape or form. You remember the process programming. And we've had lots of conversations via the process programming, via Instagram over the years. And here we are.
Yeah, that's, after you asked me to jump on the podcast, I gave it a lot of thought and I'm like, man, this is something, we were in the same area, but I think, and we will dive into this, I'm sure, but I think me especially was so like focused on work, because that's the culture over there. It's like work hard, nose to the grindstone. And I never really came up for air. Like it felt like that. So every time I went over to Coastal and I saw like everything that you guys had going on, it was just impressive. The energy in that gym is amazing. And I've always appreciated and respected what you've done with Coastal and the process. And yeah, jumped on board the process programming elite path back last year around fall, and I've been loving it. Yeah.
It's funny you talk about those times because what year was that when you came over? Was that 2014, 15? Or was it 15, 16?
Yeah. 14, 15, I believe. I left in 17.
Yeah. So, I wasn't too different in terms of kind of my mentality. We were kind of early days of having a gym. We'd been in business for like 4 or 5 years, but we were so new to the gym thing. We're still figuring out CrossFit, figuring out coaching in group classes. CrossFit gyms were popping up every like 3 to 6 months back then in Hong Kong. It was like that very early stage of like CrossFit's rise in this part of Asia. And, new coaches coming in and out. Personally, I was like really intimidated by, a lot of the other guys like you who'd been in the game for a long time, like longer than me in terms of the sport of CrossFit. And I was, to be honest, quite intimidated and kind of felt like I almost kept to myself a little bit more. I kind of felt like I have to earn my reputation before I can reach out to these guys and speak to them and have conversations. And yeah, it's funny now, like yourself, a lot of the other coaches who are in and around that time, I'm still in connection with and probably have formed better relationships and connections with as time has gone on, even though we're not in the same place.
Yeah, time's funny. I mean, you grow and you learn, and looking back, I realize like the frame of reference that I was in back then certainly wasn't the most conducive to growth, because I wasn't just, Mr. Social and go to these other gyms and things like that. I was the same way, like do the work. I'm training for regionals, and that's my singular focus, to the detriment, of growth in Hong Kong for sure, I think. Yeah.
I feel like
fit. So that's, that was the goal.
I feel like you have reflected on this a little bit. I feel like you've put some time into thinking about this. Is that the case?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's something, I think I spend a lot more time reflecting these days, where as younger, mid-20s, it was more impulsivity. Now I try to take a breath, then react, and or take a breath and then process, or just kind of really sit with my thoughts. That way I can understand the intention behind the thoughts, and that way I can better guide my action, I think.
Well, where did that come from? Was there a catalyst? Was there a moment that made you start becoming more of a reflective thinker?
I think it's just the different lifestyle things that I try to implement, like meditation and sort of different self-care habits, taking a moment to pause and reflect, just being more mindful. It's kind of tapping into that more mindful intuition, intention vein, where whenever I do something, I want to make sure that the intention behind it is pure. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you always been like that?
No, I really haven't. I've always kind of acted on emotion a little bit. I let emotion guide a lot of the decisions, younger for sure. But now I think as you get older, you're your early 30s as well, right?
I'm 30, masters next year, buddy.
The masters next year. All right. You're with me. Sweet. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, I think the older you get, the more you start to consider your decisions, because you just start to realize that you don't have all the time in the world to say yes to everything, so you have to be really more considerate when you're thinking of things.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Cam, Tell us your story. What has brought you to this point? I mean, if I look at your Instagram, I see US Air Force veteran. That's profoundly put on your profile. You know, the owner and the founder of Base3 Fitness, which I believe is more an online strength and conditioning, nutritional coaching service organization. You've done a lot of CrossFit. You haven't missed CrossFit Open since 2011. You've been to regionals, you know, which is a pretty damn high level of the sport 4 times. You have your own podcast now. And most importantly, you remember the process program community. So like, tell me about you. Like, how did you come to this point? Dig into your history, go as far back as you want.
There's one question that I was like, man, what would he ask that I'd be like, that's a really hard one. It's tell me your story, right? That's such a hard one. And you hit the highlights, right? You hit the moments, you hit the Instagram moments, right? Those moments where, yeah, I'm serving the country. It's great. Everything's awesome. I'm competing, I'm working out, I'm having success there. I'm able to create a business, that sort of thing. But, you know, what has never really been a part of the social media is, man, I've never really done a good job of like highlighting the difficulties, right? And that's kind of where I'm kind of graduating into now is I do realize that after, you know, everything that you mentioned, like there's a lot of stress that goes with that. There's a lot of struggle, a lot of difficulty. And now trying to tease out those difficult moments to communicate to my audience, however big or small that may be, to make some sort of impact. So yeah, my story, it's a lot of up and down. And, you know, I knew early on in the military, you know, I got started with physical training before the military, because I knew that I wanted to be in peak shape. So I was the guy buying Men's Health magazines, tearing out the month-long workout plans that they give you each month, and then just recycling those until I get a new magazine. And I would do box jumps, running, sprinting, that sort of thing. And I knew at that moment that I love fitness, but the Air Force was this giant thing that I had to get over and get through and join and serve. And I did that and it was great, but I did realize 2 years in, I'm like, this is awesome. I love the benefits. I love travel. I love this camaraderie I have, but man, I really love helping people in the gym, but I have 4 more years on my military contract. So I dove in. It's been a lot of learning, a lot of education along the way, a lot of learning by doing. That's one thing that I've been incredibly fortunate. You know, I used to beat myself up a lot. I used to be such a program hopper. Like I'd try Invictus, Comp Train, Training Think Tank, and I'd bounce around and I'd go a cycle, maybe 2 with each one. And I beat myself up because I was ready to move on and do something else. But through that, I learned so much. I learned what works, what doesn't, you know, different training methodologies, different protocols. And now, yeah, with Base3, I'm able to kind of give that to my athletes, like all the workouts that I've done. I tell them jokingly sometimes, I do the bad workouts so you don't have to. You know, I got all that stuff out of the way. This is going to be intelligent, smart programming, you know, with the occasional one that might put you on your back. But yeah, that's kind of a brief summary of, you know, the past 10 to 15 years. Yeah.
Okay. Let me rewind you a little bit.
Yeah, please do.
The Air Force. What was the driving factor behind wanting to be a part of the Air Force? And also like the Men's Health magazines, because I did exactly the same thing. When did that all start? How old were you when you started getting into fitness?
Yeah, so I had left home and moved to Ohio, of all places, to do construction for a little bit. And man, 17-year-old self thought that was the dream. Like, I get paid, I get to drive a company truck, get my own little cell phone. I thought I was living the sweet life, and it was cool for a little while. But after a while, I'm like, this is the ceiling of what I can reach here is pretty low. And I realized that at 17, 18. So, I had always considered the military. For the longest time, I was leaning toward the Marines, but after some really deep heart-to-hearts with my mom, who was involved, she was a server at a restaurant, and she was like, Cameron, you got to join the Air Force, because every one of the clients that I serve are all wealthy, intelligent, smart, successful guys, and they all were in the Air Force. So that's kind of what made me go to the Air Force. And, travel was one of those benefits that, of course, was very enticing to me. So I got to travel to a dozen countries and, help with humanitarian aid in Africa and work in Afghanistan for public affairs. So the mission was great, and the mission was something I can definitely get behind. But there was always that fire burning in the back. Like, how can I apply fitness when I get out of the military?
Did you know, when you were thinking, how can I apply fitness when I get in the military, were you thinking that's going to be coaching? Like, did you know it was going to be coaching?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I didn't know how CrossFit existed yet, because how CrossFit coaching existed, rather, because all my training had been done, solo. I didn't have a CrossFit affiliate. It was kind of, here's the workout on the website, whatever website I was following at the time, do that workout. And I'd have people come up and ask me, what are you doing? What is this? What is that? And I try to coach them. And in the moment, I'm like, this feels really rewarding. This feels really good. I want to do this more. So I got like a part-time job, personal training. It was classic personal training, clipboard, put them on the treadmill for 10 minutes, come over here, we're going to do some curl. It was very, I knew I wanted to coach, but I knew I didn't want to do that kind of coaching for sure. So it always geared toward more CrossFit and more functional fitness. And then as I deployed, I started a nonprofit affiliate. Pretty much every duty assignment I was at, I called it Coalition Fitness in Afghanistan. And I called it CrossFit Vicenza was the affiliate I started when I was stationed in Vicenza. So everywhere that I've been assigned duty station wise, I've tried to take CrossFit with me so I could change lives wherever that was.
That's awesome. So you were basically, wherever you were stationed, you were essentially creating your own affiliate. And who were you coaching?
Anybody that would come into the gym. I remember in Italy, it was mostly military moms, so the wives of the military members, and they would all come in because the only class I could coach was around 10 a.m. I think, and they would all come, and it started with 2 or 3 people, and word spread, and next thing you know, there's 20 people out on a basketball court, running burpees, box jumps. Yeah, it was early days. There was something magic about that.
That must have been what, 2000 and what years are we talking here? 2010, 2011?
I think 2010, 2011. Yeah.
So that's like early days, early CrossFit days.
Yeah, there was no, I don't want to say there was no experts in the field, but the experts in the field didn't have as big of a platform that they have now, for sure. And now everybody's an expert, right?
So you quit the Air Force and you pursue a life in coaching. Where does that take you?
Yeah, so I left the Air Force. I was stationed in Italy at the time, and I remember it was crazy stressful because I had it all mapped out, man. I was going to move to California. I had applied for a job in Invictus. Things were starting to fall into place. I was like, San Diego, this is the dream. This is what I've always wanted. Unfortunately, the timeline for what CrossFit Invictus was looking for a coach didn't work out. I think I was about 6 months too late. My exit date from the military was 6 months too late. So bummed out, panicked, made a last minute decision to move to South Florida. And it was terrifying, but I coached there full time at a gym called Cat 5 CrossFit. And I was the full-time coach there, head coach. So I was doing maybe 15, 20 classes a week, volunteering whenever I could. But that was the first year out of the military, I went from making this really good salary, benefits, dental, health, all this stuff. And in my not naive, but just kind of ill-informed mind, I thought when I get out, this is easy. I can do this. Personal training, it's all good. It's good money. My first year out, I made like $12,000. And I was like, oh shit, this is going to be a long journey. This is going to be hard. And I knew when I was in Florida that at a certain point in the trajectory I was on, again, I got to the point where I couldn't make more money because it was a small business. I had deep conversations with the owner at the time. Like, I just can't give you more hours. There's no hours in the day. So at that point, that's when Hong Kong kind of fell on the table. And it was a really, do you know Tiffany by chance? She used
Tiffany
to work
Yancey?
Yes, that's it. Yeah,
yes.
She used to work there. Yeah. So she introduced me to the job at Cavaliers right down the road from you guys. Yeah, jumped at the chance. So that's how I ended up in Hong Kong.
And so you said when you went to Florida, it was scary. What was scary about that?
The cutting of the safety net. The military takes care of everything. It's really, I mean, it's a benefit, of course, but sometimes at the detriment, because you get so, institutionalized is not the best word for it, but you just get so used to the structure, the rigidity, and the paycheck, right? Like I get a steady paycheck every 2 weeks. It's like clockwork, and I can predict that. I can count on that. So when I got out, that was gone. Everything was gone. And they do a good job of transitioning you out and giving you the tools you need, but at the end of the day, it's all on you, right? You have to do those things. You have to take action. And to me, when I looked at the amount of action that I had to take, it was this giant mountain of stuff that I had to do. I'm just like, this is a lot. And moving to Florida without, Uncle Sam helping me out was nerve-wracking. So yeah, it was just the unknown, stepping into the unknown.
So you set this job in Hong Kong, but you're also at the same time, this is 2013, 14 now. You've done 3 years of the CrossFit Open. Like, where is the whole balancing of coach and athlete? What's happening there right now?
Ooh, there was no balance, man. It was go. So in Hong Kong, I had signed on with CrossFit Cavaliers to coach 27 classes a week. And that was my schedule. And I was like, okay, I can do this. I was still young, right? 24, 27, something like that was the age range. And yeah, I coached 27 classes a week, 3 to 4 a day, bam, bam, bam. And then I would train probably 3 or 4 hours a day, and then go home and do an hour or two of mobility, food prep, stretching, meditation. Like, it was CrossFit sun up to sundown. There was nobody else here. There was nobody home. It was all CrossFit, right? And that really, I made it to regionals, Pacific Regionals, best performance ever. Finished like 146th in the world. I was stoked, but I wasn't healthy. Like, there was some mental, I was just burnt out, and it was not a good thing for me, because I could see it happening, right? I enjoyed training. I enjoyed regionals. I enjoyed coaching, but then at a certain point, everything stopped being fun, like CrossFit related. And I actually kind of rebelled against CrossFit in a way, because it was just so all consuming. Like, imagine waking up every day at 4:30 a.m. and thinking about one thing until you go to bed, and then waking up and doing it again for months and months and months. So that's kind of where I was at. I was just exhausted and burnt out. There was no balance, but I was fit, man. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, I had those exact same thoughts for all those years as well. And obviously I talk about my burnout story all the time on here, so I'm not going to bore listeners with that again. But because for me, realizing it wasn't healthy didn't come until actually many years later, reflecting back on maybe some of the health issues that were happening, recurring injuries, like how frequently I was getting sick. I even had adrenal testing done and had my scores were horrendous, but I was still I'm good. I can still train 2 hours a day. I feel fine.
That was going to be my question. Like, when you got that information, how did you interpret it? How did you react to it?
It was funny. So, because it's like anything, I'm sure you've experienced this as a business owner as well. You read every business book about what you should and what you shouldn't do, and you just think you're different. It's like, I need to hire someone. No, I'll be fine. Like, I've already got 10 clients. I'm doing it all by myself. And obviously that snowball effects. And obviously it all cascades and breaks down horrendously. And that's the learning point. And then that's where you reflect and go back. But I did, it was about 2014, 15. I actually did a mentorship with the Irish Strength Institute. So a guy had flown over. He'd worked with Charles Poliquin, creating the PICP, super intelligent guy. For some reason had a link with the gym in Hong Kong who's doing strength and conditioning. He came over and he ran this mentorship program. He was basically going to be in town for, I think it was one week, and then he was going to come back for level 2. So I signed up, learned so many things that I know now. I actually credit to that mentorship program. But what was really cool as a part of that mentorship program, they made us do adrenal testing. So on day 2, you had to do your saliva swabs. So, first thing in the morning, lunchtime, nighttime, and basically it was sent off to Europe for diagnostic testing. And then when he came back for the level 2, he'd have all the results. And so, he brought each person on the mentorship, and I think there was only about 6 or 7 of us. And so I sit down, he's like, Ed, I've got your cortisol test here. I'm like, yep, hit me. And, I knew at the time, I was sleeping 4 hours a night, if that. Oh my God. I was coaching a 5:15 class, coaching a 9 p.m. class, and, stacked PTs all day and training twice a day. and getting really drunk on the weekend, like all that shit.
Yeah.
And he's like, mate, you are a mess. And I was like, what? And he's like, your cortisol is flat all day, every day. He's like, how do you feel? And I was like, in my head, at the back of my head, I knew I felt terrible, but I was like, I'm good. Like, I feel fine. He's like, how often do you train? I was like, twice a day. He's like, you need to be training once a day, 3 times a week, if even that. And I'm like, I'm still getting better. I'm still getting fitter. I'm still getting stronger. So I kind of just nodded my head and smiled and said, yeah, sure. And obviously ignored all the advice. Only later, probably in the next year or two, that's where it all came crashing and burning in spectacular fashion. But, for you, like, did you know at the time that this was not healthy? This was not sustainable?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I did. I just think I was too macho to try to recognize that. Like, I think with the expectation, because I would tell people, I would tell my circle of people, like, man, I'm working hard. This is tough. And people would say, like, that's Hong Kong. Like, you're supposed to work. That's the norm. All work. Yeah, all work and some play on the weekends if you have time, right? And when you do play, you go play hard. Like, you go out and you get smashed. It's Hong Kong, man. And I kind of like found myself sliding nice and comfortably into that groove. And yeah, I think I knew there were some issues, because I had some moments where, like, I felt the pressure on my chest, where I'd be at home and, regionals was approaching and I had all this extra training to do and I had to make sure my food was dialed in, and I would be sitting on the couch at night and I couldn't take a full breath. It was just like that crushing weight that on your chest. I don't know if you feel that every now and then, like that was there. So that should have been an early warning sign for me. Like, hey, there's probably something not right. And then there was just like a lot of impulse control, like going out and partying. And I'm like, man, this is so out of alignment with what I want to accomplish. What am I out partying in Long Kwai Fong until 2:00 in the morning? Like, that's not good. So yeah, I think there was some warning signs, but again, I was just like too hard charging to recognize it or acknowledge it. Like you said, this guy was looking you dead in the eyes and saying, hey, here's the numbers. They don't lie. I'm fine. I'm great. I'm still making progress, whatever.
I think then there was like the pain culture of CrossFit. It was like no one wasn't in pain. Like, no one was feeling optimal. Like, no one had a sex drive. Everyone was way too lean. No one had like high levels of so it was kind of like the norm. It was like, well, everyone else is having a voodoo floss their knees for 40 minutes before they squat. So why is it weird if I have to do it? And, I even look at our membership back then. It's like our membership was doing the same. Like, everyone was a mess. And I talk about those days all the time, as really important learning days as a coach, and understand that difference between performance and health, and trying to find that sweet spot. But I just think it, like we were talking about, it was a norm of the times. It was hard to know that there was anything different.
That's so true. And I have a question for you from like a coaching perspective. Do you think is there one single catalyst moment that you can think of for you that kind of made you switch, like, whoa, this is not the way to train. Let me take this healthy way that I'm learning for myself and give it to my members. What was that moment for you?
Yeah, definitely. My moment was, so I signed up to do the Asian Championships. You remember Mike Mogard used to run the Asian Champs? Such a good competition. I'm so gutted that finish. So, Mike basically ran the Asian Championships, qualified to finals, did the finals in Bangkok. Leading up to that competition, like, my knee was a bit of a mess. My knee's a bit of a mess anyway from the rugby days. And as a coping mechanism to pain, when we played rugby, and this was just at the time because we didn't know any better, anti-inflammatories was something you'd live off. It was like game on weekend, pop an anti-inflammatory. If you got a sevens tournament on a weekend, in between every game, pop an anti-inflammatory. And there wasn't that much science, talking about the negative effects of anti-inflammatories. It was like, for me, it was like, wow, if I take this pill, all my pain goes away and I can do things that I can't do without it. Of course I'm going to take it. So because of the rugby days, I transitioned to CrossFit, and honestly, for 2 years, every squat day, I would take an anti-inflammatory before I trained, and I wouldn't start squatting until I was pain-free, and then I would start loading the bar. So basically, leading up to this Asian Championships competition, and I was like really fired up, really excited. 6 months in, and like my knee was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I was training twice a day. I'd hired an individual coach, worked with Carl Ruth from Training Think Tank for 7 years. And this was kind of the early days of when I started working with him. And it was like, if you want to be competitive in the sport, you need to train twice a day. That's just what everyone does, maybe even 3 times a day. So of course, that was what I wanted to do. And that's what I thought I had to do. But basically, when the competition finished, and I decided, okay, maybe I should actually lay off these anti-inflammatories for a little bit. I stopped taking it. And within like 2 days, my whole body was broken. Like, honestly, could hardly walk upstairs, couldn't walk downstairs, couldn't squat, couldn't even squat past 45 degrees without immense levels of pain. And so that for me was a breaking point in terms of physical. Like, there's something physically, what have I done to myself? This is a cost of, now I reflect back all this time. And so from that moment, that was the moment I reduced from 2 times a day to 1 time a day. That was where I started implementing warm-ups and cool downs a bit more effectively. That's when I started like doing breath work and meditation. And then from that, that was a catalyst into self-growth, like, creating more time to actually work on the business and myself. I then was able to then start my exploration journey into my own mindfulness and mental health. And that was really, 2015, that was the start of everything for me. That one competition where my body just completely broke down was like a very distinct moment for me. What about you?
Yeah, I love that. That's the fact that you can label it to that one moment. I don't think I can, unfortunately. I think it's one of those things that happened gradually, where I bumped up against the ceiling of my capacity too hard, and I hurt myself, and I would dial back. And just slowly over the years, I think, for a 2-hour session, let's say, it used to be 15-minute warm up, a minute or an hour 45 training session. Now it's probably 30 to 45 minutes of warming up, an hour and 15 of actual training. And I'm okay with that. And I think the moment that I became okay with that was the moment that I accepted, like, self-care is important. And my recovery is important. Making sure that I'm moving well and everything like that is very important. So yeah, just being super disciplined with my recovery protocol and making sure that I'm always, and it kind of goes to what you said, you got to a point where you're tired of punishing your body and you actually respect yourself enough. I think a lot of that growth comes from self-compassion, like loving yourself enough to say, you know what? I want better. I want to be better. I want to feel better. I want to help people in a better way. And picking up those self-care habits along the way, just, I think, show that you love yourself and you have a great relationship with yourself.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I needed like a catastrophic something to happen to me to force me to slow down. And I think it's very much the case in many people, many hard charging individuals who struggle to slow down, because this obviously doesn't apply to everyone. Probably most of our population is the opposite. They need a bit more oomph to actually get them going. But for probably people like myself and yourself, sometimes you need that thing to be taken away from you. In my case, it was the ability to train and do cool things with my body. I couldn't do it anymore. And that was where you have to ask questions. Well, if I keep on doing what I was doing, I'm going to be the same way I am. So maybe there's another way to do this. So going back to you, Cam, you're going through this phase in Hong Kong. You're realizing that you're starting to perhaps call it burnout. You're burning the candle at both ends. Like, what next? What happens next?
Well, in true me fashion, rather than try to address it and like fix it internally, I'm like, nope, I got to move. I'm out. Peace. I'm leaving. And to the detriment, but I saw this job pop up in Virginia, and everything has been like a step forward, progress to some degree, whether that's, compensation, responsibilities, titles, that sort of thing. And I saw this job, and it was a great opportunity for advancement. It was in the US, which is where I'm from. And it's about 4 or 5 hours away from family. So of course, I jumped at the chance and took this job coaching in Virginia, full-time gym manager. And it was just one of those things where it was a transition that I feel like I was resistant to at first, because, I was there for a little over 2 years, and I had great relationships, and I really loved it there. I still think back fondly. I have an Apple TV, and the screensaver is a flyover of Hong Kong. And I'm like, man, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And I do miss it. But being back in the States, if I look at that as like a catalyst to starting Base3, I couldn't be more thankful, because I had this job and worked for about 4 years as head coach, gym manager at PR Star Fitness in Chantilly, Virginia. And then realized like the next step for me, the next progression, albeit a decrease in salary, is to do this for myself, because I've been wanting this for over 10 years. And it's just, I've taken the long way, the very scenic route to get here. But now that I'm here, I have no regrets along the way. I'm so thankful for every part of the journey. Hong Kong, being coaching here back in Virginia, down in Florida, everywhere, every place that I've coached, I'm so thankful for, and just really, really grateful for.
But what is it? What is it that made you want to do your own thing? Because it's different. I mean, I definitely think as coaches, we see owning our own gym or having our own business as like the holy grail. That's like the natural progression of a coach. One day we'll all own our own gyms. But I also think that like owning your own gym and owning your business definitely isn't for everyone. Like there's a certain something that you have to have to want to step into that arena. So what was it for you? Why did you want to go into that space?
Well, to be honest, Ed, there are some days where I'm like, I don't have what it takes to do this. It's a lot of self-doubt, man. Yeah, I think that it was like the natural evolution, right? You start coaching and then you see it on Instagram. Hey guys, so excited to announce my own coaching business now. Everybody's an online coach. So for me, I felt like that was a very saturated market to step into. And I had a lot of like pep talks for myself, hey, you've been doing this for a long time. You know what you're doing. You've created a network. You've coached around the world. Like this will work. But yeah, there are some moments where those of you that are thinking about starting your own business, it's not always all it's cut out to be. And if you consider yourself a specialist in training and nutrition and mindset, whatever that world looks like for you, I would, if you're even considering starting your own business, start to branch out, become a novice, and really adopt that beginner's mindset into business development, like accounting, procedures, systems. This is something that I wish I would have started a while back, is just creating the right structure, because now I have clients coming in and here I am erecting the scaffolding to keep them up, right? Like these are my clients. I got to support them. Oh, here's another one here. Let me fix it. So now it's like, all right, I'm at this point now where everything's kind of at a pause and I'm just really trying to isolate and basically perfect my systems here. But yeah, if starting your own business is seen as the next evolution, but it doesn't have to be, right? It doesn't work for everybody. It's a really hard thing. My wife, when I told her like, hey, I want to start my own business, she was terrified, but she also said, you're never going to work harder in your life. And I was like, it's okay. It's what I love. It's my business. But dude, it's really hard. It's really hard.
I know. Tell me some of the biggest learnings that have come out of setting up your own business.
Oh man, biggest things that have come out of my own business. Number one, the first thing is that positive affirmation that I can do this. Like I did it. I created a business and it went from nothing to something. That right there is a pretty cool thing. If you acknowledge that, it kind of like, especially if you've done it too, and I'm sure you think about this a lot, like it kind of pumps you up a little bit. Like, yeah, I created this. This is cool, along with the help of everybody around me too, right? So just that positive affirmation that you can do it. That was one thing that I really learned early on. The second thing is, I think the more you learn, the less you realize, right? That's been such an eye-opening thing, because I think I'll have one thing sorted out and then this pops up and I had no idea that was coming. So I think always being malleable and just being super flexible and really just adapting to every kind of circumstance that's thrown your way. And the other thing too is you have to, and this is something I'm so big on now, is edit your day, plan your day. It sounds meticulous. It sounds kind of anal retentive, but I plan my day down into 15-minute interval, just because I know that if I have my day laid out, there's no question how I'm going to show up, because I'm going to show up and coach. I'm going to show up and I'm going to do my personal training session. I'm going to do my deep work practice and program for 3 or 4 clients. There's no question about it. So planning everything has been probably one of the biggest things that I've implemented lately. That's just been so helpful.
I mean, you say that you wish you created these systems before starting it, but isn't starting a business just such an incredible teacher?
Oh, yes. You know what? That should be a requirement. Everybody should start their own business, at
I
least for
honestly
6
think
months.
so.
Yeah. That would be a great learning experience for people, just to see, to sound like an old man, like to see what it's like in the real world. But man, you want to talk about being thrown into the fire, figure it out, start a business, go for it. It'll be fun, they said.
Cam, let's switch gears a little bit to Cam the athlete.
Yeah.
And because I think this is where we've had a lot of conversation. And a lot of our conversation has been, just over a message via WhatsApp, which is kind of like our athlete tracking software. But we've talked about goals. We've talked about just mindset and your approach every single day. We've like dug into a little bit, like coming to terms with program hopping that you did for a long time and the realization of where you're at now. I'd love for you to share whatever you feel like sharing, just kind of what that journey has been like. What do you want to achieve now? Maybe that's a good place to start. Like, what do you want to achieve now as an athlete?
This is the second time I've verbalized it on a platform like this. The first was on our podcast, and this is the second time. I want to make it Masters CrossFit Games. Like when I think about it, the thing that got me started, and maybe this is something that I'm holding on to out of this, like this mindset that I have right now, is like, I've always wanted to go to the CrossFit Games. That was from the time I started watching Miko Salo. And if you know who Miko Salo is, respect, because you've been around for a while. Watching him and seeing that's what I've always wanted, right? And I've been very, fortunate that the journey to that involves helping other people realize their fitness. But now it's like, all right, I'm about to enter 35. I'm still in decent shape, right? I have a certain level of fitness that I've maintained over the years. And there's only one way to go from here, and it's forward. So yeah, I want to make the CrossFit Games, and I'm trying to set up my life in a way that supports that while supporting a business, while being a supportive husband. That's where the job starts to get a little difficult. It's like wearing these 3 hats and making sure that I show up to my wife as a husband, not as the selfish athlete who needs to train, and make sure that I show up as a coach to the athletes, not as, a supportive husband. They don't need that. They need me as a coach, right? So really making sure that I have the roles and the responsibilities of everything that I'm trying to accomplish in a day laid out, planned, ready to go. So yeah, Masters next year, CrossFit Games, that's the goal.
Nice. Love it. Now I want to ask you, what's my goal? No, I'm not.
Yeah,
we're not talking about Ed's goal just yet. We're going to finish you first, Cam.
Yeah. Okay.
What is it about making it to CrossFit Games though? What is it about that's driving you to do it? Because it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work now, more work than ever before. Even as a masters athlete, like in the 35 to 40 division, it's definitely no gimme. Like it's maybe even more competitive than even the open division. So tell me, what about that goal is actually driving you?
Oh, that's a good question. I knew, man, leave it true Ed fashion, prying deeper into the question. That's good. Because I need to attach a strong why to this. And I probably need to work on this a little bit, to be honest, because right now, if I'm being totally honest, it's the expectation that I should. Just like when you get to a certain point in your coaching career, the expectation is you try to start your own business. The expectation is, man, shit, after 11 years of doing this, I should be at the CrossFit Games, right? I've worked hard for this. So I think now at this kind of second arch in my competitive career, now is the time to strike. And I'm working for myself. So I'm able to control my schedule. Not having enough time to train is becoming less and less of a valid excuse, because if I'm the person who makes my schedule, I only have me to blame. So kind of like you said, you don't have to do 2 sessions a day. You can maintain great fitness with 1 session a day. And then if you have the time, open it up to another session. But yeah, I need to unpack that a little bit more for myself, I think, and build that stronger connection to the why. Because right now, yeah, a lot of it is just natural trajectory and just kind of where I'm at right now with training and stuff. It feels good. So of course I'm leaning into that. And yeah, I just need to create a stronger why, because we're still pretty far out from the season, right? And I think the deeper I can get connected to that why, the easier it'll be to train for the next 9 to 10 months here.
And then what after that? Like, is the goal to keep on doing this for as long as you can?
You know what, honestly, I think if I make Masters CrossFit Games this coming year, I could probably take a step back from the competitive stuff. I always envision my training post-competitive CrossFit kind of being like, the functional bodybuilding. I want to look like an athlete, but I don't want to spend 4 hours a day in the gym. Like I don't want that. Yeah, it's a hard life, and you've lived that. It is a struggle. You have to be keyed in. Yeah, everything has to be, because it's not just going to the gym. Your life has to support that. You have to fuel yourself properly. You have to rest properly. You have to mitigate stress in other areas. It's not just the time you spend in the gym. And I think people lose sight of that.
I feel like we're unpacking this why for you right now, Cam. Because if I repeat that back to you, the goal is to make it to the CrossFit Games. But once you've done it, I feel like once that box is checked, we're going to move on to that next thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Do you view that as a bad thing? Do you view it as like checking the box and we're all good? Or is it like, it should be stronger than?
I definitely don't think there's any right or wrong with this stuff. Like, okay. I think it's important to recognize and lean into that. Right now there is this, because I guess where this goes back to is the process versus the outcome. Right. And we talk a lot about, the outcome is often serves as a driver for us to create the process, the things we have to do every single day to achieve that goal. But actually the true fulfillment and all the lessons and learnings come from the actual day-to-day steps of you making your way to that goal. So, if you fall short of that goal, that's okay, because all the learnings and all the fantastic memories and all the moments have come into the 12 months that led up to that year. And then I guess the question is, you just got to ask yourself that next year, like, do I want to do that again? Like, is there more learnings on offer? And am I willing to put in the steps to get there? Don't know. What do you think?
I love that. I mean, it is very insightful. And I do think that, as you were talking there, the one thing that popped into my mind is like, I have to make it this year. I really want to, because I'm at a point now where my day's full. Okay. There's not going to magically be more time. So that extra session, that, extra 30, 40 minutes in the gym, it's starting to eat up into, and I have to look at it like this, because I am running a business. It's starting to eat into my time, and time equals money, equals like my ability to serve clients. So sustainably, like, I'm at a great spot now with clients, but if I want to grow, something has to give. And that's probably going to be training. So right now I'm like, all right, we got 1 year, work hard, stay in the trenches, don't make excuses, and make your dream happen. Because it is a dream, right? Like, I've always wanted to make the CrossFit Games. Make that happen, check that box, as it were. And then I think the next phase is going to be, I get excited thinking about it. Like, my heart's racing. Business development, like social media, really working on crafting and fine tuning the culture I have with Base3. I think that's my next CrossFit Games.
Nice. I love that. I think it's coming down to priorities for you. You can already see that actually it's not so much about checking a box, the CrossFit Games. It's more that you've got this growing priority of this business that you want to dig into because it's fun and exciting. You can see it. And but right now, that's not the biggest priority right now. Right now, you're saying, actually, I want to give everything I have to achieving this goal that I've set for myself. And if I don't, I don't. If I do, I do. Regardless, win or lose, next year, the priority is going to shift and I'm going to go after this next thing. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think hearing you verbalize it, it kind of sounds like, I don't want it to sound like my clients are low priority. Of course not, right? Like, it's just this needle that just constantly moves up and down slightly, right? Like, I have to train, okay, I'm back to being an owner. Have to train, back. It's always, hey, not everything can be important, right? But it's all important. So that's kind of, yeah, when I'm in the gym, it's very much, I don't have my phone with me. I keep it on do not disturb. It's training time. And then as soon as I get off, it's okay, check-ins, texts, nutrition stuff, it's back to work. So again, it's all really, I don't multitask. I don't do a lot of that because you can't. It's just, you got to be singularly focused, finish the job at hand, and then move on.
But isn't it a beautiful thing that you have the love of training and pursuing this goal of CrossFit. And in the moment you step out of that, you've got this other love for the business, for the growth of your company, for the people that you're working with. It's awesome.
It is. It's a pretty uniquely rewarding experience. I just feel great because I'm able to live the dream, live the passion, and help others realize theirs as well.
Yeah, I think, when I reflect on hearing your story and I reflect on mine, there was another thing that contributed to me making my decision where I decided to not pursue. Because when I think back to 2014, I was sitting on the CrossFit Games website looking at Ben Smith's profile and being like, my squat's not that far off Ben Smith, to be honest. I was like, he's only clean and jerking a little bit more than me. Like, I reckon a bit more training, a couple more sessions, some good coaching, I'm going to get there. And obviously that golf just like multiplied. I basically stayed exactly the same and everyone else got 100 times better. So for me, there was actually a point where I was like, I'm actually trying my best. And when I say trying my best, I look back now and it definitely wasn't my best. The effort was there, but the execution and the application was poor. But basically, I'm trying my best and I'm just not good enough. So matter of fact, like I'm just getting further and further away from attaining that goal, which for me was like I wanted to compete as an individual. I actually qualified at regionals, and I qualified in my first year, but there was just no way ready. I got lucky with the workouts in the Asian region, qualified. So for me, that was actually one massive thing I had to consider. Ed, you're actually just not as good as you thought you were. You need to recognize where your strengths lie, and it's actually not in high level CrossFit. You can be like a local competitor, do weekend competitions, have fun in that, but let go of that dream. So that was actually one massive driver. But obviously also the business was a massive driver as well. And actually, I realized when looking back, when I was pursuing that goal of wanting to compete in CrossFit, I was doing it for external validation. I was doing it because everyone else around me and other coaches in the other gyms like yourself, Taylor, John Britton, the guys Taylor, who was at Asphodel, the guys around me in my job doing the same thing that I was doing were competing at a high level. So I just thought that's what I have to do. And if I want to earn my credentials as a CrossFit coach, I should probably pursue the same thing. And so going back to, the question I asked you, which was like my why was actually pretty poor. And so when push came to shove, I didn't have that burning desire. I knew how to suffer because I'd played hard sports my whole life. That's never been actually it's pretty hard for me to do now. I don't like suffering anymore. But back then suffering was never a challenge. It was never a hard task. But the moment I let go of that goal and the moment I realized that I'm actually not doing this for the right reasons, that was just so much weight off my shoulders. It was so much weight off my chest. And it was like, you know what? Being a great athlete, you don't have to be a great athlete to be a great coach. I'm practicing what I preach. I'm learning and putting myself through the process that everyone else is. And it's upgraded me as a coach. But, I'm going to have to acquire that high level athlete experience to the people I coach, not by maybe my own experience as an athlete, which is essentially kind of where I channeled my energy to, which like, I need to work with high level people now. If I want to put myself in that arena to say that I can help people pursue the upper echelons of the sport and pursue the CrossFit Games, like what experience do I have? Well, if I didn't make it as an athlete, let me see if I can do it via another avenue. And that's kind of where I shifted. So it's kind of like that day was, okay, letting go of Ed, the athlete, and fully embracing Ed, the coach.
Yeah. No, do you still consider yourself, because I know you put in a lot of training time, do you still consider yourself a CrossFit athlete? Like what's your relationship with that identity?
Yeah, I love training.
Yeah.
I love, and I train and I take part in the CrossFit Open every year because it gives me an avenue to explore. Like my purpose is, I've got a lot of less than ideal things that happen to my body over the years as a result of sport and burnout and business actually. And I'm always forever, and I think this will never change, like I want to optimize my health. When I say health, I mean like the mental aspect, but also the physical aspect in whatever I'm doing at that point in life. I'm always trying to optimize as much as I can. So like from a physical standpoint, like I want to challenge my body. I want to still see if I can get stronger. I want to see if I can improve mobility and movement. I want to see if I can maintain aerobic capacity. I want to see if I can juggle all of that with being a coach and a business person. Like, I just love that challenge, and I just love training. So training would always be a part of my day, and it's still probably one of the biggest priorities in my daily schedule. So, you know, like you, I prioritize everything from start to finish of a day, and training is in there on my calendar for all my team to see, for everyone to see. And that is a non-negotiable hour that never changes. You can't call me, you can't speak to me about anything else. Like, that is Ed's time to train. But as soon as that hour, that 90 minutes is gone, you know, then it's just on to the next task. So yeah, I would say I don't really identify as the athlete as much anymore. You know, I next year when I think about what do I want to achieve, like, well, I want to continue to train 5 days a week, 6 days a week. I love following the program. I love being a part of the process training community. I'm going to do the CrossFit Open. I want to qualify for the Masters just because of the experience. And that's it. Like, I want to experience what that process is like. I want to experience, like, talking about this now already gets me excited. Finishing the Open, and rather than resting for a week and doing the quarterfinals and destroying myself like I did this year, having the new challenge of having to navigate now, you know, however long it is, 8 to 10 weeks, and then do it again, but have workouts that don't bury you as much. I'm excited for that experience, and to you know, I'm excited to what I'm going to take away from that whole experience, and how that's going to empower me to be a more, you know, have more wisdom as an athlete, have more wisdom as a coach. So, you know, that's really my drive. And if for whatever reason I somehow then made it to semifinals, well, I'd probably just take on that obstacle when it came. But that's, you know, definitely not a driver.
But it's not the main factor behind your training. It's just for health, mental health, physical health, longevity, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's it's a sweet spot though, because
yeah,
you know, if it's like, if I was to actually say to you, Cam, my goal is I want to train for health and longevity, I'd have to question myself, like, why the fuck are you doing CrossFit? Like,
true, that's a good point. Yeah, that's
why are you throwing yourself under heavy barbells when sometimes your knees just don't want to do that? You know, why are you doing, you know, this probably wouldn't be a health prescription of exercise. It's certainly not what I prescribe to my clients who ask for, you know, whose goals are health and longevity. So I guess what I'm trying to achieve is I want to get better at the sport of CrossFit because I love the sport, but without the cost, without the short, medium, long-term cost of my health. Now, I understand that by leaning in and doing and choosing this challenging pursuit of this crazy sport called CrossFit, like, I am probably shaving away a couple of years of my life. I accept that though. Yeah. And that's because I'm competitive and I love sport, and that's completely okay. But if I was to sit here and tell the world, like, I train for health and longevity, I'd probably be lying.
Yeah. That's such a good point, because it's a conversation I have with clients sometimes is, when does good health go too far, right? This is something I've just been fascinated by, because to us, I mean, to everybody else, the people on the CrossFit games, they're the epitome of health. But to your point, caloric surplus has been shown, I think, to take away years from your life, right? The amount of intent, like, it's just, there's so many things that actually just start ticking away years from your life on these CrossFit Games athletes. And yeah, I think while they are the picture of health, they are also the picture of people who I would even say are like borderline obsessed with what they do, because these people live their life 6 to 8 hours a day, training, stretching. It's all CrossFit. And I was there once, and that was only scratching the surface. These people are just, they're in a league of their own, man. Like, I really, like you said, you thought you were fit, you put up a good score, and then you see, you know, Noah Olson beat you by like 2 minutes in a 7-minute workout. Like, what? How is that even possible? You know? So yeah, it's however good you think you are, there's always better, right? That's definitely the lesson there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think I go back to that health conversation. And I definitely think like there's a sweet spot between the two. Like, you know, if we have, you know, people like Peter Attia, or people who are talking about longevity and who are saying, like, you know, you should be don't let your heart rate get into zone 3, you know, like gentle, moderate to gentle exercise, you know, don't induce a stress response. You know, how much hypertrophy do we actually need on the body? You know, how much, like, do we need to be dipping into anaerobic style training? And I agree with all those things. You know, from a health markers, a blood markers perspective, maybe those things don't serve all that much purpose. But then it's like, what about the mental health and the physical health benefits that come from like applying stress to the body and adapting from stress? What about like the lofty goal of setting a hard goal and charging after it and achieving it. Like, what about like what comes from, what mental and physical adaptations come from like putting yourself out there and doing something really damn hard, like the CrossFit Open or a competition? And like, what do you take away from that? So, we can't, I feel like the conversation around health has gone probably from when we started CrossFit, incorrectly, which was, way too much high intensity, way too much things that actually weren't pushing us towards health. And now we're kind of moving back towards like bubble wrapping ourselves, or wrapping ourselves in cotton wool and protecting yourself from everything bad. But it's like, maybe not everyone just wants to just have perfect blood scores and, not have levels of muscle mass. Maybe actually we want to accept that there is a cost for some of this stuff, but the middle spot is, where cool things happen. I don't know. I think about this stuff a lot.
I love this. We could keep going all day, but I think that there's so much to be said there. Like, people who fastidiously, like just obsessively chase down those internal markers that you can't see, you can't feel that. Like, it's a number on a piece of paper. And granted, yeah, there's science and there's data there. And if it's pointing one direction toward unhealth, like being in poor health, change something. But there's nothing, you can't quite replicate the feeling of just having a great workout and being around your people and like high-fiving and knowing you poured your heart and soul out and you're laying on the floor. And yeah, maybe it's probably not the best thing for you, but man, that post-workout feeling, I think it's hard to compare that to any, biomarkers or anything like that. But yeah, there are some great thought leaders in the field in this kind of like health and wellness space. Like Andrew Huberman is another one that pops up constantly. I love his stuff, but I do feel like we're getting to this point where it's like you said, bubble wrap, make sure everything's taken care of, almost to a detriment. Like you said, I don't know what it's like to push too hard anymore because I'm scared to go there. Like, oh, I was told this was bad for me. I better stay in zone 4 instead of zone 5. Yeah, it's an interesting shift that has happened.
Yeah, and I think in the same way you said, I think it's important for everyone to run a business to experience what that's like. I also think it's important in fitness and physical health that like at some point in our lives, we should get close to, push, maybe go beyond that threshold to know at that moment in time actually where your limits lie and where your capacity sits. So in CrossFit, we call it the red line, right? And we say like, back in the day, we cross that red line fucking 5 times a week and that would be normal. And now we're saying like, never cross the red line because bad shit happens at a red line. But if you never cross the red line, this carries over to so many aspects of life. You never find where your upper limits are in anything. Like, how do you know what you have to give? How do you know if you're given enough to get better? Maybe you're undercooking it. Maybe you're overdoing it. But I think every now and then, like visiting that area is a really important thing to do.
Is that something you communicate with your clients too, as a coach, like knowing the importance of it? Do you tell your clients, hey, on this one, I want you to just put the hammer down, go?
Yeah, it's so tough because it's like there are so many things that weigh into whether that's a good prescription or not. Sometimes, and I guess it's always just, I guess where I'm at now is we talk about self-regulation or auto-regulation all the time. I know that's something you talk about as well. It's something we really believe in the process, which is, okay, you have a training program here on paper. It doesn't mean you have to follow it down to a T. Right now, obviously, what we do as personal trainers when we're sat in front of someone, we're doing an hour with them, is that we can have that conversation. How are you feeling today? How was your sleep last night? Or on any levels, what was your HRV this morning? Like, what do you feel like doing today? And, we can prescribe and adjust and edit that session to make it appropriate for that person and their goals. But what happens when you're working with like a big audience of people and a big group of people, and you've got people like yourself all around the world who are, all part of the same thing, pursuing a similar goal, but have their own individual stresses and things they have to deal with on a daily basis. Like, it's hard. And, we can't be there as coaches every day to be like, let's do a check-in and tell me how you're feeling. Let me make some adjustments to the program. So, what I really want to do now, and a big reason, but, one of the drivers behind creating this podcast was, we need to educate people to create autonomy in their lives so that they can manage their shit by themselves. And that's the goal. You just want to keep on having, and I know you're doing it a lot with Base3. When I go and check out the content you guys are sharing, a lot of it is around education, around self-awareness, around like navigating the stresses of life and how to still be successful with mental and physical health. That's what I want to do. I want to just, and it's not rocket science, actually. It's the basic stuff. It's like
Simple,
the basic lifestyle habits and basic nutrition, and like look after your sleep and get some sunshine. And when you're not feeling good, don't push too hard. When you're feeling great, strike when the iron's hot. And so it's rinse and repeat on those messages. And it will probably be rinse and repeat on those messages forever until the day I die. But what's really, really cool? I'm sorry, I'm completely rambling.
Oh my gosh, I love this.
It's like I'm on Cam's podcast right now. Fuck's sake, I was like, Ed, you're supposed to be interviewing Cam, remember?
That's right. You will be one day.
What's cool is, we have the water cooler on the process on Burnout, right? Which is basically where people in our community can just chime in, put something up there. And often it starts a bit of a thread of communication. But when people start to take ownership of the regulation process, and what's really cool is when we think back to CrossFit, like back in the day when we first started, how uncool it was to take a rest day, how uncool it was to deload, how uncool it was to like adjust a session because you didn't feel up for it. Now people are celebrating. They're celebrating that the fact they adjusted a workout. They celebrated the fact that, hey guys, I actually had a rough sleep last night because my baby was up in the middle of the night. I'm going to take a rest day today. Just want to let you guys know. I see that and I'm like, that is fucking cool. Yes. I'm like, that is so awesome. And I'm always like, yes, I'm going to hit like on this 100 times because, like I want to acknowledge that's exactly what we're trying to achieve. And if we can have that impact now, like people, they're going to create a lifetime of progressive fitness and balancing, and they'll be successful. They won't need us one day. That's essentially the goal. Is that I want you to not have to need me forever and ever. So
gosh, I think that's such a beautiful way to put it, because as coaches we chase like visual results, right? You didn't have a muscle up, well now you do. Mission accomplished, right? But you can't put like it's really hard to quantify that. So when you get those little surprise lessons that you taught somebody who now knows that when they only got 4 hours of sleep and they feel like shit in the morning, they probably shouldn't go try to do like a hero workout, right? So when you see people learn that lesson, you almost forget that that's part of what you're trying to teach people. For me anyway, like I have people that travel a lot for work, especially now with COVID being lifted. And there's always that pressure of like, I didn't get my workouts in. And I always have to say, hey, no sweat. Like it's okay. The workout will be there next week. You have a job to do. You're like a really high level in your career. Like, don't worry about training. And when you're traveling, it'll always be there. You just got to show up the best way you can for your job. That's what's important right now. So yeah, auto-regulation, self-regulation. I love that. It's something I lean into heavily. I know you make jokes about Ed's deload weeks, but man, I'm pretty good at taking those myself too. I'm taking one right now, actually.
Yes, we both are. I'm bloody loving it.
That's great.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's something just I think about a lot now, and it's like we don't have as many people who come to us now who are that old school classic. Like they want the pain, they want the hurt. We just like are seeing less and less of that in our community. And I think that's also reflective of the message that we're trying to put out there.
The question I have for you is, what do you say to that person who comes in and you can tell that they have that old school CrossFit mindset? What do you tell them when they refuse to listen?
Yeah, I think that's where we have to ask questions and understand why, like, where is that coming from? And, perhaps, before we judge, maybe that's because that's all they've ever been told. Every fitness expert they paid lots of money to has told them that's the way it should be done. And, fair play, that I would probably think the same if that's what I've ever been told. But I think asking questions and understanding why is super important. But then the second part to that is, just understanding what that goal of the individual is. Like, what is the intention? What purpose does fitness play in your life? And I think that's a really, really important question. For me, like, fitness and training serves as a means of allowing me to show up and be optimal and in the other aspects of my life, in my relationship, in my job, my ability to coach, and my ability to lead a team. That's what if fitness starts to take away from my ability to do those other things, then fitness isn't doing the role that I want fitness to be doing. And I think, asking that same question, and it's more than just a question. Sometimes it takes navigating and some hand holding, and takes time for someone to realize, like, why are you training? Because, the disconnect for most of us in CrossFit is that we're training like we want to get to the CrossFit Games, but we're actually doing it because we want to play with our grandkids.
Yeah.
And
And
that's disconnect.
that's a huge disconnect. And you're right. And I think so many people train out of that obligation of, it's CrossFit. This is what I'm supposed to compete, right? Well, you don't have to. There's other options. There are other paths to go down. Don't feel like you have to invest in all the gear and all this other stuff. Just, it can do a really great job of getting you in really great shape. Like if you just do GPP, focus on your nutrition, get your sleep, manage your stress. Like you said, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? And that's where people lose it. So I think that's that's the big takeaway is just, what is your training for? What's the purpose you use your training for?
Let me ask you, what is your goal with Base3 now? Like, what do you envision for your business? Are you someone who sets 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals? I mean, personally, I don't. I've never been, but
yeah, not usually, because it's a far away guidepost that I really have a hard time connecting to that. I kind of have this rough idea, but I think, I really have tried in these early stages of business to be dynamic and go where growth is telling me to go in a way. And, early on, I was doing like these macro consults over the phone. And I was realizing that, well, these are great. It's a cool way to talk to people, but there's not a lot of follow through. So now I'm doing 3-month nutrition plans, and I kind of steer away from the macro, just one-off macros, because I don't have the ability to follow through with that, right? Like I give a person the numbers and maybe they follow them for a month, maybe they don't. But as far as long-term vision goes, I would love to get to a point where I'm working with about 20 to 30 athletes, and maybe 2 or 3 additional coaches under me who are kind of, working under the Base3 umbrella and coaching athletes, nutrition, training, and mindset. I want the podcast to grow. I've got a lot of ideas. And I know that with the emergence and the popularity and the mainstream acceptance of mental health is this area of necessary, like it's so necessary of growth for people. Like they need to improve that. And that's something that is speaking to me a lot lately, and what that looks like and how it's implemented, whether through like going through some cognitive behavioral therapy courses and that sort of thing. Like that's what's really speaking to me right now, because man, it's never about nutrition. It's never about working out. It's typically like right here, right? Like what can we do? Because if you can't work out, there's a motivation issue. So how do we fix that? Well, if you can't, physically move in the gym, it's a movement issue. How do we fix that? So it's like a Rubik's Cube, and I'm just always trying to figure it out, and I'll go wherever that takes me as far as Base3 is concerned. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Cam, I'm super excited to see, watching from a distance, where it all goes. And I'm already loving what you guys are doing. So I have no doubt you'll be successful.
I really appreciate that, man. Thanks a lot.
Awesome, Cam. Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having a proper catch up finally. And thanks for allowing me to hit record while we have our catch up. Really enjoyed a lot of the conversation. And hey, to us being masters this year, and to you hopefully getting to CrossFit Games and me supporting you getting there.
Let's go. Let's do it. I really appreciate everything, man. I'm so honored for the opportunity. Thank you for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Last one, Cam. If people want to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can reach out to my Instagram. That's Cam Currie _ CAMCURRIE _, or you can reach out info@base3fitness.com.
Awesome. Cam, it's been a pleasure.
All right. Yeah, it has. Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time, man. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too.